My HOA president decided my car was an eyesore, a piece of junk that ruined her perfect neighborhood. She screamed at me, called me a disgrace, and personally called a tow truck to haul it away while she watched with a smug grin. She thought she had won, but she made one critical mistake. That junk car wasn't just my property. It was a highly classified, active-duty vehicle for the United States Secret Service. And the phone call she forced me to make didn't just stop the tow truck. It brought a federal storm down on her that dismantled her petty kingdom piece by piece. My name is Mark. For the past 15 years, my life has been a series of high-stress environments, demanding deadlines and constant vigilance. I work in a specialized field of IT security for a government contractor, a job that requires a quiet mind and an even quieter life outside of work. When my contract was renewed and a significant promotion came with it, my wife and I decided it was time to finally buy our forever home. A place where the loudest sound would be the birds in the morning, a place where we could finally decompress. We found that place in a neighborhood called Maple Creek Estates. It was everything we had dreamed of. The promotional brochures called it a slice of American tranquility, and for the first few months, it truly was. The lawns were all a perfect, uniform shade of emerald green. The houses, while each slightly different, all adhered to a pleasant and cohesive aesthetic. There were no loud parties, no cars speeding down the streets. There was just peace. This peace was maintained, as we soon learned, by the iron will of the Homeowners Association, and more specifically, its president, a woman named Brenda. Brenda was a woman in her late 50s who seemed to have turned neighborhood governance into her entire identity. She was rarely seen without a clipboard and a look of intense scrutiny on her face. She would patrol the sidewalks, like a general reviewing her troops, occasionally stopping to measure the height of someone's grass with a small ruler she kept in her pocket. She was the architect of the neighborhood's tranquility, and she never let anyone forget it. At first, I respected her diligence. After all, her strict enforcement was the reason we loved the neighborhood. We were quiet people who followed the rules. We had nothing to fear. My work often involved special projects, and one such project required me to have a specific type of vehicle on hand. It wasn't flashy. In fact, it was the exact opposite. It was a 1998 Lincoln Town car. The paint was a forgettable shade of dark gray, the body was solid, American steel, and it had absolutely zero distinguishing features. To the casual observer, it was just an old car, perhaps belonging to someone's grandfather. A junk car, as some might call it. But to me, and to the people I worked for, it was anything but. That car, which I'll call Sentinel, was a highly modified piece of equipment. Its unassuming exterior was a shell, a disguise. Underneath, it was packed with reinforced plating, secure communication arrays, and specialized surveillance hardware. It was a ghost, designed to blend in anywhere, to be completely and utterly unnoticeable. It was parked legally in my driveway, well within the property lines, clean, and in perfect working order. It was, however, undeniably old. And in a neighborhood of brand-new Teslas and luxury SUVs, it stood out by not standing out. And that's when my peace was shattered. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon. I was in my garage, organizing some tools, when I saw Brenda marching down the sidewalk, her clipboard held tight against her chest. She stopped at the edge of my driveway, her eyes fixed on Sentinel. She stood there for a full minute, just staring, her lips pursed into a thin line of disapproval. I decided to be proactive and neighborly. I walked out, wiping my hands on a rag. "Good afternoon, Brenda," I said with a friendly smile. She didn't return the smile. Her eyes flicked from the car to me, filled with accusation. "Mark," she said, her voice sharp. "What is that thing?" She gestured contemptuously toward the Lincoln. "That's my car," I replied, keeping my tone even. "It's for a work project." "A work project?" she scoffed, taking a step onto my driveway as if to inspect it for filth. "It looks like it belongs in a junkyard. It's an eyesore. It's bringing down the property values of the entire street. You know we have standards here." I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was my peaceful home. "Brenda, I can assure you it's clean and in perfect running condition. It's legally registered and insured, and it's parked on my private property. It's not violating any laws." "I'm not talking about the law, Mark. I'm talking about the bylaws," she snapped, tapping her clipboard. "Bylaw 17, Section C. All vehicles visible from the street must be in pristine condition and be of a model year no more than 10 years old. That heap is well over 20 years old. I was certain I had read the bylaws cover to cover before. We bought the house. I had to for my job. I knew for a fact that no such clause existed. I've read the bylaws, Brenda. There's no rule about the age of a vehicle. A flicker of anger flashed in her eyes. She was not used to being questioned. It's an interpretation of the pristine condition clause. And as president, my interpretation is the one that matters. This is your first and only warning. Get rid of it. She scribbled furiously on her clipboard, tore off a sheet, and slapped it into my hand. It was an official HOA violation notice. It cited a non-existent rule and gave me 24 hours to remedy the situation. 24 hours, Mark, she said, her voice low and menacing. Or I will have it remedied for you, at your expense. She then turned on her heel and marched away, her back rigid with self-importance. I stood there in my driveway, the flimsy piece of paper in my hand, the piece of my quiet afternoon utterly destroyed. The problem was, I couldn't get rid of the car. It was an active piece of a very sensitive project. Moving it without authorization wasn't an option. I hoped she was just bluffing, a petty tyrant making empty threats that I was wrong. The next day, I was in my home office on a conference call. My office window overlooks the driveway, a detail that was about to become very important. Around 2 p.m., a massive, greasy-looking tow truck rumbled down our quiet street and backed into my driveway, its yellow lights flashing, bathing my office in a nauseating strobe that my heart sank. She actually did it. I quickly excused myself from the call and hurried outside. The tow truck driver, a large man with a stained shirt, was already out of his cab, preparing the hook, and standing on the sidewalk, with a triumphant, venomous smirk on her face, was Brenda. What do you think you're doing? I demanded, my voice harder than I intended. I'm remedying the situation, Brenda declared, her arms crossed. I gave you a warning, Mark. You chose to ignore it. Actions have consequences. You can't do this, I said, stepping between the tow truck driver and my car. This is private property. You do not have the authority to tow a legally parked vehicle from my driveway. The tow truck driver hesitated. He looked from me to Brenda, clearly uncomfortable. Ma'am, he's right. I can't tow from private property without the owner's consent or a police order. Brenda's face turned a shade of crimson. She stomped over to the driver, getting right in his face. Are you questioning me? I am the president of this HOA. I represent the authority of this entire community. His car is in violation, and I am authorizing you to remove it. Do your job. To me, she screamed. You don't get to tell me what I can and can't do in my neighborhood. You brought this trash here, and I am cleaning it up. You are a disgrace to Maple Creek Estates. This was the point of no return. My attempts at reason, at being a good neighbor, had failed. She had cornered me. She had brought a third party into a federal matter. She had escalated this from a simple dispute to active interference. My posture straightened. The time for being pleasant, Mark, the quiet IT guy, was over. Brenda, I said, my voice dropping to a low, cold calm that seemed to unnerve her more than my shouting. You have just made a very, very serious mistake. I pulled out my phone. Oh, who are you calling? She taunted. Your mommy? The police? Go ahead. They'll side with me. I'm the one upholding the standards. I ignored her. I dialed the number from memory. The tow truck driver had wisely backed away and was now leaning against his truck, watching the drama unfold. A calm, professional voice answered on the first ring. Secure line. I turned my back slightly to Brenda, cupping the phone. Mark speaking. Authorization code Delta 907 Tango. I have an active civilian interference with Asset Sentinel. I repeat, an aggressive civilian is attempting to illegally seize Asset Sentinel. My location is 124 Willow Lane, Maple Creek Estates. I require immediate interdiction. The voice on the other end didn't ask questions. Understood, Delta 9er. Interdiction team is mobile. ETA is 3 minutes. Maintain position. Do not allow them to touch the asset. Out. I hung up and turned back to Brenda, who was watching me with a confused, mocking expression. Was that supposed to scare me? Asset Sentinel. Interdiction? What silly game are you playing? It's not a game. I said quietly. I'm giving you one last chance, Brenda. Tell this man to leave. Right now. Never, she shrieked. She turned to the tow driver. Hook it up. Now. Or I'll have your company's license reviewed by the city. But before the driver could even respond, a new sound cut through the air. It was a low, powerful rumble that was growing louder by the second. It wasn't the sound of a police car. It was deeper, more menacing. .2 identical, black, unmarked Chevrolet Suburbans turned onto our street. They didn't slow down. They moved with a purpose that was terrifying. They screeched to a halt, boxing in the tow truck and my driveway. For men in dark, impeccably tailored suits emerged, two from each vehicle. They wore sunglasses and earpieces. They moved with a fluid, disciplined grace that spoke of years of training. There was no hesitation. They immediately created a perimeter around my driveway. One stood by the tow truck, his hand casually resting inside his jacket. Two others flanked my Lincoln. The fourth, clearly the man in charge, walked directly toward Brenda. Brenda's smug expression had vanished. It was replaced by a slack-jawed look of utter confusion and dawning fear. The residents who had been peeking out their windows were now openly staring. The lead agent, a tall, imposing man with a jawline that looked like it was carved from granite, stopped a few feet from her. He didn't look at me. His entire focus was on the trembling HOA president. "Ma'am," he said, his voice calm, chilling baritone. "I'm Agent Thorne. Who are you?" Brenda stammered. I'm Brenda Miller. I'm the president of the Maple Creek HOA. Who are you people? We're the people you just forced to interrupt a national security operation, Agent Thorne said, his voice devoid of any emotion. He held up a small leather wallet, flipping it open to reveal a gleaming gold badge. United States Secret Service. The words hung in the air. The tow truck driver looked like he had seen a ghost. Brenda's face went from crimson to a ghostly white. "Secret Service?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But it's just a junk car." Agent Thorne's eyes, hidden behind his sunglasses, seemed to bore right through her. "Ma'am, you have just attempted to illegally seize a vehicle that is an active, commissioned asset under the protective authority of this agency. You have interfered with a federal operation. You have harassed a protected federal contractor. And you have done so on a recorded, secure line." He took a step closer. "So, I'm going to need to see your identification. And then you are going to tell me, and the two federal investigators who are 5 minutes behind us, exactly why you felt you had the authority to compromise a matter of national security over a neighborhood bylaw." Brenda's entire world collapsed. In that moment, the clipboard, her symbol of power, slipped from her nerveless fingers and clattered onto the pavement. The imaginary kingdom she had built in Maple Creek Estates evaporated under the cold, hard glare of federal authority. I didn't know," she stammered, fumbling for her purse. The car, it's so old." "That is the point, Ms. Miller," Agent Thorne said coldly, taking her driver's license. "Its appearance is a non-negotiable operational feature, a feature you have now compromised." He handed her ID to another agent, who began speaking quietly into his wrist. Thorne then turned to the tow truck driver, who had his hands raised slightly, as if to show he was no threat. You're free to go. A word of advice. Next time an HOA president orders you to break the law, you call the police, not your dispatcher. You're lucky you didn't attach that hook. Leave now." The driver practically scrambled into his cab and peeled out of my driveway, not even bothering to stow his equipment properly. Agent Thorne finally looked at me, and his entire demeanor softened. "Sir," he said with a nod of respect. "Are you all right? Is the asset secure?" "I'm fine, Thorne. The asset is secure," I replied. "Thank you for the prompt response." The sight of this terrifying man addressing me as "sir" was the final nail in Brenda's coffin. She looked back and forth between us, the last bit of color draining from her face as the full picture finally clicked into place in her mind. The fallout was swift and brutal. The federal investigators arrived and questioned Brenda for 2 hours right there on the sidewalk. They explained that by attempting to tow the car, she could have triggered any number of defensive countermeasures, creating a public incident. They informed her that the HOA, as a corporate entity, was now facing a federal investigation for compromising an operation and potential fines that ran into the 6 figures. Over the next 2 weeks, Brenda's little empire was systematically dismantled. The HOA's board was served with a federal subpoena. Their legal counsel advised them to cooperate fully. An emergency meeting was called. When the other residents learned that Brenda's personal vendetta against my old car had exposed the entire neighborhood to massive financial and legal liability, they were furious. She was voted out as president in a unanimous vote of no confidence. But it didn't end there. The HOA's insurance carrier refused to cover fines related to illegal activity and interference with federal agencies. To avoid bankruptcy, the HOA board had no choice but to file a civil suit against Brenda personally to recoup the legal fees. And the eventual fine, which was settled at a staggering $75,000, as she had to sell her house, the one she had lorded over for so long, just to pay the lawyers and the first installment of the fine. Her reign of petty tyranny was over, ended not by a neighborhood revolt, but by a quiet, unassuming Lincoln Town car. A few days after the incident, Agent Thorne's team arrived in the middle of the night and swapped Sentinel for an equally unassuming but slightly newer Ford sedan. My project continued without a hitch. The neighborhood is different now. The new HOA president is a reasonable man who understands the difference between maintaining standards and harassing residents. The lawns are still neat, but no one carries a ruler. There's a new kind of peace here, one born not of fear, but of mutual respect. People are still polite to me, but there's a new distance in their eyes, a mixture of curiosity and caution. They don't know the full story, only that the quiet IT guy in number 124 made a phone call that brought black SUVs and men in suits down on their tyrannical HOA president. They don't mess with me. They don't ask about my car that I never wanted any of this. I just wanted a quiet place to live. But Brenda forced my hand. She tried to use her tiny bit of power to bully and intimidate, without ever considering who she might be bullying. Some people are given a little power and they use it to build a community. Others, like Brenda, use it to build a cage. And sometimes, you have to remind them who, exactly, is holding the key.